Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, exactly after 5 months, illegitimate state of Israel and its occupation forces continued their genocide and war crimes in Palestine, particularly in Gaza Strip. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, more than 30,000 innocent Palestinians died because of the Israeli bombardment, while more than 72,000 Palestinians are injured. At least 1.5 million Palestinians took refuge in the last city of Rafah with the Egyptian border, where Israeli planes are bombarding and brutal forces are continued their ground assault as well. United Nations Security Council still failed to have ceasefire in Gaza. UN Charter and international law is nowhere in Middle East right now. Truce talks in Cairo, Egypt, backed by Qatar and the United States, ended without any breakthrough. South Africa once again approached International Court of Justice to have additional measures to halt famine. United Nations says that every 1 in 6 children in Gaza particularly, they are facing malnutrition and dehydration. 60,000 of the pregnant women need emergency and urgent assistance. Every month, 5,000 pregnant women give birth in a dangerous situation and condition. Israel halted all routes, blocked humanitarian assistance and aid for the Palestinians. Holy month of Ramadan is approaching, but unfortunately there is no sign of ceasefire in Gaza. Gaza people still waiting for peace, food, water, medicine, shelter, treatment for the injured, and also searching for missing people. This is the dire situation and a very sensitive situation right now in Gaza, and also West Bank is facing the brutalities at the hand of settlers, also at the hands of Israeli occupation forces. To discuss this dire situation, we have in our studios Dr. Waseem Ishaque. He is the senior analyst and has a very close eye on right now what is happening in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza and West Bank in Palestine. Most welcome to you, Dr. Waseem, in the studios. My first question is related to what is happening actually, and that is the illegitimate state of Israel committing genocide, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Destroyed everything, murdered innocent civilians, along with that closed borders, stop assistance, erupting starvation, particularly for the Gaza people. Do you think that the criminal Israeli regime barbarically committing another Holocaust?
As far the ground realities are concerned, Faisal, what we are witnessing now, it is a collapse of international system and the collapse of rule-based international order which was in place since the end of Second World War. This is the first regime which we have seen that openly challenging the United Nations and its resolutions, and backed up by the United States, which has always been there to push for whatever Netanyahu wanted to do. They have blocked all ceasefire resolutions in Security Council so far, and they have violated the ICJ's regulations and verdict on the protection of civilians. And what we face today, more than 30,000 innocent civilians killed, more than 73,000 injured, around 11,000 innocent children who have died as a consequence of this war.
And 9,000 women among
almost a similar amount of women.
Yes.
So what we are witnessing is almost a repeat of Holocaust. And Netanyahu is actually hell-bent to do a genocide and clear off everyone from Gaza. This is what its defense minister announced in the beginning.
What do you think that how dangerous this path is, as the illegal state of Israel is actually intends to impose a new administrative and governance system or arrangement upon Gaza, or might be exercise some of the measures in northern Gaza only to examine what happened next. So they intend to divide Gaza as well. So how do you see this aspect, because it is going to be very dangerous?
I have absolutely no doubt what Netanyahu wants. He has at several occasions, he and his cabinet ministers have announced that they want to actually clear off every area starting from the river bank till the sea, So, Mediterranean Sea. So, that means the entire area they would like to reoccupy and then have a security system of their own.
You are talking about Jordan River.
Yes, I am talking of Jordan River, starting from Jordan River till the Mediterranean Sea, including entire Gaza and part of West Bank as well. So, this is their grand strategy. What they are doing at the moment is they are actually following those steps which they have actually and the timelines which they have set for themselves. So, now they have cleared off the northern Gaza, they have cleared off the central Gaza, the entire population is now pushed into Rafah, is around 1.5 million population which is now in Rafah, and he is hell bent to attack even Rafah despite the international condemnation, and despite that United States has given actually tried to convince that not to do that. However, they are still hell bent. The purpose is to actually push the entire population back to Sinai as they did in the past. So, they want to actually repeat back the past and have the entire area secured by the Israeli Defense Forces and have a new order which was actually announced by their defense minister also at the start of war.
Your point well taken. We welcome here viewers, former ambassador Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi. He is with us and joining us online. Most welcome to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, when we are talking about particularly the US, the former Clinton administration's ambassador to Israel, Martin Indyk, he has given a statement just yesterday, and he said that invasion of Rafah means Israel risks pushing its closest ally to its limits and jeopardizing its weapon supplies crisis in Israel-US relations. Is it so, or it is just an eyewash?
Well, I think Martin Indyk is expressing his apprehensions, but I think it will not come to that because the US will continue to back Israel. That is my own feeling because this is an election year and Joe Biden will not want to lose the Jewish votes. It's a domestic political consideration. Now, the situation in Gaza is very worrisome, as you had yourself outlined in your introductory remarks. And I think that there have been 3 initiatives that have been taken, but nothing has emerged out of it. One was the OIC meeting in Jeddah, in which strong action was urged by the international community, and they had called for immediate ceasefire. And then South Africa filed the case in the International Court of Justice against Israel, alleging that it is carrying out genocide, which it is. And third, the UN Security Council has met a number of times, and the latest Algerian resolution was vetoed by the United States. So the United States is backing Israel to the hilt. Is the tragedy of the situation that the country that has been espousing a human right and the freedom of people to be prevented from aggression, from outside interference, and from genocidal initiatives is all on one side, and U.S. support for Israel is.
But Mr. Ambassador, you are absolutely right. When we are talking about the United Nations Security Council's role in having ceasefire, unfortunately, we have seen lots of resolutions were vetoed by United States, and it is acting like a ping pong ball rather than just a decision-making body.
That's right. I mean, the Security Council is caught up in the geopolitics of the area. And the geopolitics is that the United States supports Israel as an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. And for that purpose, they think that any action that Israel takes, avowedly or presumably for its security, where there is no question of Israeli security being compromised, it is a travesty of in both international law and, in fact, travesty of logic, because there is no reason why Israel should continue its bombing campaign of innocent civilians, of men, women, and children, denying them health facilities, bombing their hospitals, and making it absolutely impossible for them to survive. And this is reminds me of the poet who said that it is a situation where the living will envy the dead. Those who are living in Gaza are perhaps envying the dead because they are in a situation even worse than complete termination of life. They are in a situation where they are being forced to live without food, without any kind of medical help, and without any hope
Your
of
point
the
well taken, Ambassador Ali. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about the humanitarian situation right now, UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights of Internally Displaced Persons, Mrs. Paula Gavira Bittenacker, she termed forced displacement, transfer or detention of Palestinians in Gaza, and now from Rafah, their push towards the border. She termed it very shocking and completely illegal. You know that 70% of the Gaza people from the north, they took refuge in Rafah. So how do you analyze it as the special rapporteur, what she said?
Actually, now this is the point where the entire international community is actually worried as to what is going to happen next. But what we have seen, how this war has been prosecuted, and if you just follow up for last 2 weeks, when the Rafah people, they are in search of food, even those people who were searching for food have been attacked and many people have been killed. While the United States on one hand shows sympathy for the civilian innocent casualties and looking for the humanitarian aid and humanitarian pauses, on the other hand it actually endorses all the Israeli actions. So, we witness a double standard here. But just as a PR action, what the United States did, they threw some air sorties, flew some air sorties and put some food for the innocent people. And today President Joe Biden announced in the State of Union address that they are going to create a temporary sort of port in Gaza for a humanitarian relief.
So I have a question here, that whether this United States assistance to the Gaza people, what comes after 5 months actually, so do you think that this port is going to play a role for Gaza people to give them assistance, aid, supplies of medicine, food and all that, or this port serves as a facility for the Israelis?
Unfortunately, we have witnessed the events of last 5 months. Now there is hardly any credibility of whatever the United States says, while from the hindsight they may be doing a PR, and while what we witnessed from the face value, unfortunately they have not been able to convince Netanyahu for a delivery of aid goods which are now waiting at the Rafah crossing on the Egyptian side.
Definitely.
So, while this is the easiest way of providing relief to the
that
people,
is the easiest one.
instead of having the airdrops and now creating a port, it will certainly take a lot of time. Whether Israel agrees to for construction of port and delivery of aid through Gaza is yet to be seen, and we really can't predict the future of this port, what is going to happen. But I am sure in the short to medium term, it is going to facilitate Israel more rather than the people of Gaza. And they would have been actually waiting for the more than 200 trucks columns which is waiting across Rafah on the Egyptian side and not being allowed by Israel to move in, which is far easier to actually do rather than creating a new port, which certainly requires a lot of time.
Definitely, your point is very important. Ali Sarwar, Naqvi sir, when we are talking about the West behavior toward the Palestinians or the Palestinian state, do you think that West just wants an illegal state of Israel to exist on Palestinian land, or the Palestinians and the Palestinian state as well?
Well, they have expressed the support, their support for two states, the Israeli state and the Palestinian state, which is yet to come into existence. But
But Israelis keep on grabbing the second state.
Yeah, Israel has said that it will not allow it, and they have not condemned Israeli position. And you know, I have to make a point about what was said earlier, that there is no sympathy for the Palestinians in the West. Actually, the public in the West is very sympathetic to the Palestinians, and there are massive demonstrations in London, in Berlin, in Paris, which have been going on for weeks on end. But the governments in these countries are so beholden to the United States and to the United States government, and they are also supportive of Israel, and therefore they are not taking any action to alleviate the sufferings of the Palestinians.
So, your point well taken, Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab. Dr. Waseem, what happened in the truce talks in Cairo? Because there were lots of hopes hanging upon that. Lots of preparations were done under the facilitation of Qatar and United States, and even Egypt was facilitating whole of the process. So, why that ended without any solution, without any success?
Let me quote President Biden, who gave a State of the Union address today, and he has actually tried to highlight the important points of the agreement which was put forward to Hamas. And he says that Hamas must release unconditional release of all the captives, then should lay down their arms and also hand over all those perpetrators who were responsible for October 7 attacks, and therefore also renounce violence. All these four preconditions are absolutely unacceptable for, I am sure, for even a sane person.
So, what about the violence and the tragedy which is going on, the murders, the killings, the atrocities, the genocide, the war crimes by Israelis?
So, those all have been ignored, and rather emphasizing that Hamas should as soon as possible accept these terms so that ceasefire should happen and the people's suffering should be alleviated. So, it is all one-sided sort of proposal, and the points which I just highlighted are absolutely unacceptable to anybody, I am sure. So, unless the United States removes one-sided policy, also gets certain pledges from Israel, which has actually so far denied for the two-state solution. The Hamas requirement was that all these occupied areas should be vacated forthwith, and there should be a total release of all prisoners from the jails from Israel, and therefore they would consider. But these points actually United States is not putting forward to Israel.
So, your point well taken. Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab, when we are talking about other powers in the United Nations Security Council, particularly China and Russia. So, Palestinians don't believe United States right now because United States and the Western countries are continuously supporting Israel in all its bet, particularly when we are talking about the weapons and the political support and all that. So, how do you see the role of China and Russia in ceasefire or having peace in Palestine, and the two-state solution must have to be there?
China and Russia support the principle of two states in the first place. Secondly, they have been urging the United States government and the other Western governments, France and the UK and Germany, to urge upon Israel, in fact, to pressure Israel to stop its bombing campaign. So the first thing for them is ceasefire, and they have been insisting upon this at all levels. However, they are not as strong as the Western countries in enforcing what they want to see in this area, and so far any of their efforts have not produced any tangible results. This is the tragedy of it. The callousness with which Israel has been carrying out a bombing campaign against the Palestinians, and the whole world is doing nothing about it. That is the sad and the tragic part of this entire situation.
Well elaborated, well elaborated. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about ICJ, Israel just having a statement that it's South Africa actually exploiting International Court of Justice on behalf of Palestinians. How do you see this type of statement? And secondly, South Africa has given yet another plea into the International Court of Justice for more measures against Israel, particularly to halt them to have a famine-like situation in Gaza, which has already started there. So, how do you see that?
Unfortunately, as I highlighted earlier also, we are witnessing the collapse of international system when there is absolute disregard of ICJ's verdict by Netanyahu, and also supported by the United States, because United States was standing firmly behind and actually negating the ICJ's verdict. So, that has given a lot of strength to Netanyahu to do whatever he wants to do. But why South Africa went? Because South Africa had actually suffered a lot from the apartheid sort of regime. So, therefore, they know the pinch of that apartheid. So, therefore, they went to the ICJ. But since Netanyahu violated the previous verdict, so they have gone again, because situation has worsened from the previous verdict. And despite the fact that ICJ has actually tried to bind Netanyahu from taking certain actions for protection of civilians, he did not do that, and instead has created a situation of famine, which would be even dangerous scenario. So, therefore, it is going back to ICJ is well in time by South Africa. However, I am sure Netanyahu would play the same game as he did in the past, unless there is a full pressure from the United States for the respect for rule based international order, which they have themselves created and they have been propagating a lot. Unfortunately, for the implementation, a lot is required to be done.
Yeah, definitely it is. Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem Ishaque, for being here in the studios and well elaborated thoughts. Thank you very much. So nice of you. Ambassador Naqvi sahab, as Dr. Waseem said, that International Court of Justice first given an order that on January 26th and then again on 16th of February, and that was related to the protection of civilians, halting any kind of genocide, whatever is happening at the hand of Israeli occupation forces, and facilitate the flow of aid to Gaza. But unfortunately, there was no action taken by Israel. On the other side, Israel approached ICJ and given a very ambiguous statement into the court. It seems that they don't consider any sort of United Nation, no court of law, they don't consider any sort of humanitarian law, international law or human rights.
Yes, you see, unfortunately, from a legal point of view, the ICJ does not have enforcement. This is the difference between national law and international law. International law is based upon the consent of the member states who are signatories to international law. There is the Geneva Convention on the Protection of Civilians in a conflict situation. This is very clear. And Israel is in violation of the Geneva Convention. So ICJ has given its rulings, but the ICJ is unable to enforce its opinion or judgment on the country which is carrying out these atrocities. This is unfortunate because the international community expects the members of the countries that are signatories to the ICJ and to the United Nations Charter to abide by whatever is decided by these bodies, but they are not, the Israelis are not listening to it or adhering to it, and the Western countries are not taking any action against Israel. In the first place,
well elaborated, Mr. Ambassador. Viewers, we welcome here our next guest, and she is Arhama Siddiqa. She is the research fellow and working and serving with the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. We are most welcome to you, Arhama, and thank you very much for sparing time to be here in the studios. United Nations warned about the widespread famine in Gaza and said that it is almost inevitable without actions to avoid it. So, World Food Programme has appealed that there are at least 300 trucks must to cross Rafah border into the Palestinian territory to give urgent assistance to the Palestinians who are right now starving.
So, as you rightly said, that the World Food Programme and also the World Health Organization as well as the UN have repeatedly called for aid to go through to the people of Gaza. So, right now the situation in Gaza is it has always been an open air prison, right? So, you have 2.3 million people and you only have 55 aid trucks. If 20% of your population is malnourished, that means a famine has started. for Gaza.
Those are not only malnutrition but also dehydrated.
Dehydrated.
Unfortunately, they don't have access to the health facilities, or most of the health facilities already destroyed by the Israeli occupation forces.
Yeah.
So how this is going to be cope up? Because UNRWA don't have that is basically the aid agency of the United Nations, and they are not getting funds, they are not getting aid supplies. So how it is going to be?
So it has always been a contradictory hypocrisy when it comes to UNRWA. So I remember Trump in 2018, he also cut UNRWA's aid, and then we also had a crisis situation in Gaza. Right now, the requirement is that at least 500 aid trucks need to pass through to the people of Gaza. So we only have a maximum of 97 back in February, and right now it it ranges from 30 aid trucks to 55 aid trucks. And so, like I mentioned, the World Health Organization has also said that 20% of your population, if it's malnourished or dehydrated, as you said, it means famine has started, right? For the people of Gaza, the threshold was reached and breached back in December 23.
Obviously,
So,
it is unfortunate.
So right now, the aid is not going through, and the little aid that is going through is not going to the people who need it the most.
So the problem is that how do you see, particularly Arhama, that most of the times whenever we have watched any sort of a conflict, that most sufferers are the women and children. Right now, United Nations say that at least 1 out of 6 children, they are facing acute malnutrition and dehydration. Along with that, they don't have milk, they don't have nappies, they don't have treatment, no medical, nothing else. And it is shocking that at least 20 people died of hunger. So how it is going to be coped up?
Honestly, the world, what we have seen since October 7th particularly is that we have seen worldwide protests, because the humanitarian situation has, I would like to say, is getting out of control, has passed that point right now. So you're mentioning figures from recent figures.
Yeah, definitely. It is
deaths,
from United
right?
Nations.
But again, I remember right after October 7th, we had babies in incubators who were left to die in Shiva Hospital. So 20 is not really, it is a number from maybe last week. But then if you look at the overall picture, the majority of the deaths which have crossed overall more than 30,000,
Yes.
70% of them are women and children. And I think that is something that has made people in countries which are also allies of the US and Israel to speak up and try to get aid through to these people.
Definitely, definitely. Your point well taken. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi sahab, Israel is not halting its actions, brutalities and the war crimes. Now, Israel has planned to have 3,500 more settlements in West Bank particularly. So, not only Gaza is suffering, but also the West Bank people, they are suffering because of the Israeli atrocities. So, how do you see, whole of the world is condemning, but condemnation right now is not the solution. So, how do you see it particularly?
I think this is absolutely outrageous. There is no sense of justice, or there is no sense of human sympathy on the part of Israel, and Israel is in violation of international law. So this extension of their atrocities into the West Bank, setting up of settlements which are totally illegal, they are on Palestinian territory, is further sort of aggravating the situation. And I think it is important for the international community to act, and I think the first step should be taken by the Muslim countries under the OIC, because I think the Muslim countries can form a delegation and go to the United States, sit there in Washington and urge the government to take action. Otherwise, this will just go on and on.
Ambassador
we
Ali
have
Sarwar
just
Naqvi sahab,
crossed into.
earlier we have seen that on behalf of Organization of Islamic Cooperation, there was a delegation led by Saudi Arabia, Qatar and UAE. They visited most of the important and influential capitals, and they placed before them different sort of solutions of actually the two-state solution of the Middle East issue or the problem. So there was not a single inch move by the West. So what sort of solution would bring if the delegation again goes to United States?
This time they should not talk about solutions. They should talk about the end of the atrocities. They should just talk about immediately forcing Israel to stop the bombing campaign and to accept a ceasefire. Unless this is done, the international community under the UN Charter has the right to send a peacekeeping force in the conflict area under chapter 7 of the charter. So some very drastic action will have to be taken. Otherwise, we have just crossed the 5th month. This will go into the 6th month. We have gone into the 6th month. Then 6 months will be complete, and then the 7th and 8th, and this will continue to decimate and completely destroy the Palestinian population of the occupied territories of Gaza and the West Bank.
Your point well taken, Mr. Ambassador. When we are talking about Arhama, about the woman, because you yourself a woman, and definitely today is the Women Day as well. So when we are talking about the condition and the situation of the Palestinian woman, it's disastrous because 60,000 of the women are pregnant and they need urgent assistance, the medical care, they need shelter, they need water, food, they need the medicine. But unfortunately, that is not available to them. And 5,000 of the pregnant women, they are giving birth to their children in inhuman conditions, and that is the condition which is unexplainable even in the bombings across the region.
The thing is that, as you have mentioned, it is such a detrimental situation right now. Anesthesia for not only the women, for everyone in Gaza ran out back in December 23. I think the only anesthesia which is present is in a UAE run hospital.
Obviously, yes.
But otherwise, anesthesia all over Gaza has completely run out, and women have had to deliver their babies without anesthesia, and in the worst of conditions. I cannot stress that enough. Also, obviously, cleanliness is a major issue. Women have had to resort to taking medications and medicines, and it is just inhumane. And if the world does not, I mean, the world has opened up its eyes, but unless action is taken, then we won't see any women and children left in Gaza.
This is unfortunate. This is very unfortunate, really. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi sahab, when you were talking about the Israeli actions and how the West is actually supporting Israel and all other. So, how do you see that? What kind of role left for the Muslim Ummah, for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, for Arab League, for all others who are doing some efforts, but those efforts are not actually enough for the Palestinians because they are suffering very hard?
You see, Faisal, I'll say something that is my personal opinion, but I think the Muslim countries have to exert themselves more strongly. They have not done it so far, and this is most unfortunate because the Palestinians are the brothers of the Arab brothers that of the rest of us, and they have to act. This is a moment where the world will never, the history will never excuse them. The world will never excuse them for sitting and doing nothing while this kind of genocide was being carried out by Israel. This is a moment where the countries that should act have to act immediately.
So Israel, the occupation state, and right now the occupation forces, whatever they are doing, it's coming up that they want to wipe out Palestinians from Gaza, from Jordanian River to the Mediterranean Sea. They want it to be Israel only. They have the thinking, and on that thinking particularly they are acting. So how do you see particularly this scenario?
Yeah, I think that there is no scope for waiting to take necessary action, and that would be to warn Israel to stop its bombing campaign right away. Otherwise, a force should be created by the Muslim countries to take some drastic action against Israel. And create a situation where the international community will have to stop the bombing and the other atrocities that the Israelis are committing against the Palestinians. I think this is most unfortunate, and we must say that it is a responsibility that is
Definitely it is obvious a very unfortunate situation, and we have to step further from the condemnation as well. So thank you very much, Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab, for your time and well elaborative thoughts. Thank you very much for your candid views as well. So nice of you. When we are talking about Arhama, about the Israeli ambitions right now and how West is supporting Israel. Israel has a notion of greater Israel. So do you think that it is going to be a disaster for the Middle East if it spillovers?
Okay, I'll go into the details here. So, as you know, at the start of this year, 41 countries all over the world had are going to have or have had elections, right? One of these countries is, of course, the US. Israel has postponed its elections because, rightfully so, I would say, because Netanyahu has not been popular for at least the past 1.5 years because of a lot of his policies.
It is one of the factors.
One of the factors,
yes.
Right. So, you have the US elections in November. President Biden is not popular. He has to pacify his domestic audience somewhere. So, Israel has a sort of time limit in that sense of US support, because there's only so much that the US can support, how the US can support Israel right now. As for the Middle East, of course, it's a globalized world. There's going to be a domino effect, and the Middle East, as much as they do not want to be part of this conflict right now, especially the Gulf countries who have a focus on their national rejuvenation plans like Saudi Vision 2030, Qatar has its own vision, every Gulf country has its vision. Then you look at Syria, Lebanon and Jordan, who have severe economic crises of their own.
Obviously.
So, none of these countries obviously want a spillover effect, but it will become really, as time goes on, it will become really hard to contain that. Also, probably the most important of this is that President Biden last year, he announced the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, right? In order for that to materialize, because obviously Israel is a part of that, there has to be peace in the region. In order for that to materialize, all the Gulf countries wanted to materialize, the Palestinian issue has to be resolved. So, for Israel, there is a specific time, because countries such as all the countries are pushing for a ceasefire or for some solution to this crisis, because economically they are suffering at the moment.
Obviously.
And especially after COVID-19 and then the subsequent you have Russia-Ukraine war as well. The world
definitely
enough.
The world is grappled into the lots of situations, lots of catastrophic kind of situations, And obviously, you are very right in that perspective. Thank you very much for being with us in Foresight into the studios, and thank you very much for your candid views as well. Arhama, thank you. So nice. If you, as you have listened, viewers, it's not the meager condemnations and the statements now. We have to move on because the time is up and actions are required. International Court of Justice has given its 2 orders, and we are waiting for the 3rd one as well, which is going to be on famine, and obviously it is because of the South African plea into the ICJ. But international law must have to be respected, and United Nations actually losing its credibility because of the Palestinian issue. Also lots of other issues like Kashmir and all that, but right now Palestinian crisis is at the peak. Now the people are suffering over there. The international humanitarian law, the international human rights law, and all other laws must have to be, and Geneva Convention must have to be abided by. And it is a dire need that assistance must have to be given to the Gaza people because they are suffering at the hands of the illegitimate Israeli occupied forces as well as the illegitimate state of Israel. And world must have to think that if this is going to be happen in any other region, there would be no future for the humanity. And we have to go on with the sympathy, and the humanitarian crisis must have to be end. Palestinians must have to be taken care of, because ultimately there is the only solution to the Palestinian crisis is the 2-state solution, which the whole of the Muslim Ummah, whole of the world community, including Pakistan, is stressing upon from the last many years. So this is all today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.